all of a sudden you had nurses that were telling people to stay home, who were all of a sudden calling out lockdown for the disgrace that it was, So then seemed to be hijacked by Ukraine, and then it got hijacked by climate change. So it's all of a sudden like Bill Gates is a demon, but he's right about climate change. And I'm watching it happen now, where people now saying bomb the hell out of Gaza. It's quite extraordinary to watch people awaken and then others go to sleep. You've got children being murdered on both sides, and you're being asked, or told rather, to pick a side. Can I pick the side of the families and the innocent people, please? On both sides. That's the side I'm on. And it's the same with so many different things, even within the alternative, which is so strange, because for me, life's in the shades of grey, isn't it? Life isn't, you've got these two polar views that you're supposed to accept as the reality, because it's just another fault line. Because these will be the same people that will say, look at governments, they divide and conquer. Yeah, that's sort of what you guys are doing to each other, It's quite strange, really.
Hello and welcome to another episode. My name is Niclas, and today we're speaking to Gareth Icke, co-founder of ICKONIC and host of the Gareth Icke Tonight Show. I actually went on his show last year, and now I thought it was his time to participate on mine. Welcome to my show, Gareth.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. We were supposed to do it last week, and I let you down by being away. So I'll apologise on air for that.
No worries, no worries. Gareth, I obviously want this episode to focus on you, but for those out there who don't know you, you are son to the infamous conspiracy researcher David Icke. Your father has been on my show twice during the height of the pandemic, and even though times have changed and your father is now well regarded by many, he often talks about the mass ridicule he went through in the 90s in the UK. I am curious if you could talk about that and how that affected you. How was it for you to grow up as a child with all these controversies surrounding your father? And how do you think that experience shaped you into the person you are today?
At the time, not particularly pleasant, if I'm honest. Kids can be pretty cruel at times, especially when they're sort of armed verbally by their parents. Which now I'm a parent myself. I think, I was a young kid, and my children are not reading the Observer or the Sun or watching Sky News. So the information that these children were given to basically have a go at me and laugh at me and take the mick was obviously being given to them by their parents. So I find that quite strange now as a grown up, that would be the case. Followed to school by reporters and all that kind of stuff, which again confuses me. I don't know what they thought they were going to get out of that, but yeah, very strange. But now I kind of look at it as my basic training, really, for where I am now, because I think, there's probably a handful of people on the planet that I care what they think. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm at that point now. I'm going to say what I believe to be true, and there's honestly a handful of people that I know would be honest and just say, Gaz, I think you're wrong here. I think you're being a bit this and I would actually go, okay, fair enough. They would be honest with me. But for everyone else, that was beaten out of me as a kid. That fear of what people think, and that fear of being called names and laughed at and told you're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist and whatever else, which is now a badge of honor, hilariously. I kind of look back at it now and I think, although it wasn't very nice as a kid, it made me who I was, and without it, would I have been as willing to have spoken out and put my head up there and say things, and would I have been willing to, stand in front of tens of thousands of people at a protest with a microphone in my hand with people, heckling and police ready to come in and beat you all up? Possibly not. Do you know what I mean? Possibly not. So I'm grateful that it happened, if I'm honest, mate. And I have to say, if I went back and told the 9-year-old me that I'd be grateful for what was going on, I doubt I would have believed it. But now, yeah, it's adversity and bad things that happen to us that galvanise us, I think. And that's why I think having a sort of a nannied state, where people need safe spaces because Hillary Clinton lost, that's not preparing people for the realities of life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it wasn't very nice, but I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. So you don't regret anything. Did you have a lot of regrets during the time? I guess you had, right?
I don't believe in regrets, mate. I never have done. I don't see the point, because even as a kid, I think it was probably because I was a footballer and I was a goalkeeper, which means you're the last, point of defence. So if a striker misses an open goal, no one's really, it happens, don't worry about it. But if you make a mistake as a goalie, the ball's in the net and you're the villain. And so you kind of quickly realise that that actually, you can't, if you can't change it, there's no point regretting it. You can't go back in time. You can't change it. It's happened now, so you just have to deal with it. And so I think, even as a kid, I didn't believe in regret. I don't, because you can't change it. What's the point? What's the point in punching yourself in the face for something you can't change? You can learn from it. Do you know what I mean? That's you win some, you learn some. I believe in that massively. And so next time, you might do things differently. But in terms of regretting it, I think, there's a reason everything happens.
Yeah. Before you started ICKONIC, you were in a rock band touring the UK, right?
Yeah, I toured around Europe, did some stuff in America as well. It was all I wanted to do, mate. To be honest, that was just my dream, was just to be in a tour bus with my mates, writing songs and just performing to anyone that would listen. To be honest, I wasn't picky. I played in some dives, some proper dives, and it was fun actually, because I played some amazing shows as well, and some great festivals and some really big crowds and things like that. But most of the gigs were pretty ropey, but it's fun, And it was funny because me and my wife we went away for a weekend not that long ago, and for her birthday, and we went for a beer in this pub, and she was looking around like this. I mean, it was a dive, because we didn't know the scene in the local area, so we just sort of went into this pub, and it was a bit ropey. And she was like, "Oh my goodness," and I was like, "I kind of like places like this." She was like, "Really?" And I was like, "These were literally the places I played for like most of my." She was like, "Well, you played places like this?" It's like, yeah, when you had a few great gigs in there, but yeah, most of them were pretty ropey. I've ducked before as bottles have flown over my head, and again, I guess that's prep for this as well, isn't it? As you can kind of learn to hold your own in a biker pub, in a small town in England. You can pretty much hold your own anywhere, really.
For how long did you live that life?
Full time, probably about 5 years, to be honest. I think we worked it out not that long ago, actually, me and my former bandmate, that we were basically 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off for the best part of 5 years. And so that was, not the most healthy lifestyle for sure. But in terms of life experience, it was something. Met lots of different people, all over the world, and it kind of opened my eyes to lots of different things. And then obviously I played football and played beach soccer for England for 5 years. So I seem to only do things for 5 years apparently. So that showed me the world as well. So even, with that, I went and played in Azerbaijan. I went and played in South Africa, in Israel, places that you wouldn't generally go on holiday. Do you know what I mean? They're not places that you would normally go. And so now I'm looking at the way the world is, whether it be in Azerbaijan or with what's going on at the minute in Israel and Gaza. It's kind of, I was taken to those places through something completely unrelated, something that isn't political in any way whatsoever, or in any way kind of, alternative media-y, completely nothing to do with that. But I got to see these places for what they were to a certain degree. And so I feel like, again, it's one of those kind of basic training things where, because I've had it a few times where I've made comments about the situation at the moment, and people have that kind of, "What the hell do you know over there in England?" It's like, well, I've been there, mate. What? And people get sort of taken aback, because it's not the place you generally go on holiday. But I've been there. I've seen how things are. I've been around Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and Netanya and places like that. I've seen what the deal is. So playing football and being in bands showed me a lot of the world, the amazing bits of it, mate, and the not so amazing bits, of which unfortunately there's many at the minute.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of you telling a story of how you were approached by the music industry, offering you basically fame if you went out publicly saying your father is basically insane. Is that right?
It was a very strange situation. So basically, when the band split up, I went on my own, and I basically toured the country in an old banged up Mazda, and I went and played festivals in France and places like that, acoustically, and it was cool. But I kind of got beyond that point of hoping that an A&R man would come along, and hoping that a record label would come along, give me this huge advance that, you know, I'd have to pay back. And if they dropped me before the record was released, I'd still have to pay it back, and all these things. I'd learned from other people's mistakes. I had friends that had signed to people like Island Records and stuff, and been really stitched up. So me and my manager at the time, a guy called Paul, was a really nice guy. We went, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just raise the money ourselves and we'll go and record the album. We've got a decent producer, a guy called Dan Swift, who did Kasabian and Snow Patrol and stuff like that. Nice guy, did it on the cheap because he believed in the project. We used Aqualung's studio again, who gave us a discounted rate. And so what the idea was, right, we'll own the product. It's ours. And then if someone wants to market that and take that, then that's a whole different conversation. But I own it. I wrote these songs, they're mine. I own the publishing. That was, you know, I was very kind of strict about that, really. So then what we needed at this point was a marketing budget, because we didn't have any. We'd run out of money because we'd spent it all on making the record. So it was a case of, okay, we've made this record, we're kind of proud of it, but now we need to get people to hear it. So we looked at, you know, different investment in marketing and how we could get a radio plugger and a video plugger and just get the songs out there, basically. And one came along, which was an organization called Icebreaker, which I knew nothing of at the time, other than that they were invested in the arts. And so we were basically offered, or my manager was offered, £100,000 for a marketing budget. So he phoned me and was like, right, we've been offered £100,000. I was like, that's an incredible amount of money when all you're using it for is to market the album. That's insane. Wow. And he was like, yeah, there's a small print though. And so the small print was basically, you're going to have to change your name. And I thought, because at the time he had another artist that he was managing who'd been told to change her name, but that was because her name had a very different spelling. So her name was Natasha, but it was spelt funny. So they basically said, look, change the spelling to the normal spelling. Otherwise, no one's going to be able to search you on Google. No one's going to search you on Spotify, whatever. So that made sense. So I thought Ike, ICKE, Icke, Ichike, it called all different names. That's probably why. And to be honest, I quite like the idea of a band name for myself anyway. Like Aqualung, that's one guy. Badly Drawn Boy was one guy, you know, so I kind of like the idea of a band name. So yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, okay, well, I'll come up with a band name then, no problem. And Paul was like, no, it's not as simple as that. They want you to denounce and basically disassociate yourself with the family. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Obviously not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. So I didn't. And then obviously started to look into Icebreaker. And I think basically what they were doing was taking money out of the city of London, and, you know, investing it in different projects as a way to sort of get rid of money that then I'm sure they would kind of get back in terms of these bands becoming successful and then they're making profits. And it just seemed like there's almost this kind of laundering type thing. And then I'm pretty sure Icebreaker were mentioned then in the Panama Papers as an organization. So I was like, okay, maybe I dodged a bullet then. But obviously that was nothing. I was never going to do that. There wasn't even a split second of consideration that you would sell your soul for $100,000. Like, no, not at all.
Can you tell me how the story of ICKONIC? How did you come about starting that with your brother Jamie?
Well, to be honest, it's my brother's gig. It's not mine. He's the businessman. I'm not in any way business minded or desire to be. So basically what happened was my dad was obviously doing his dot connectors, and they were going on YouTube and they were going on Vimeo, and then YouTube were basically massively censoring. I mean, people were saying, you know, during the pandemic, oh, he made this money from YouTube. He'd been demonetized by YouTube for like 5 or 6 years before the pandemic, so that was just absolute nonsense. But they were basically, anytime you mentioned certain subject matters like the Middle East or climate change, your videos would be removed. And so it was like, look, we're going to have to do our own here. So me and my brother started doing a podcast at this point. I was happy doing a podcast. He wanted to start a channel, so he went and did that, and I carried on doing the podcast, which is now sort of evolved into these shows that I do now. But what we had was ICKONIC videos were hosted by Vimeo, and then it was like, we looked at Parler had just launched, then they were quickly taken down, and it transpired that they were using Amazon servers, and it became apparent that actually it doesn't matter if your company is 95% independent. If they can pull the plug on that 5%, they can pull your whole operation. And in the end, that's what Vimeo did. Vimeo deleted everything. with no warning. So luckily, my brother had the foresight, and my dad had the foresight to kind of try and look at ways that we could make it in-house. So that's what happened. So now everything is completely in-house. It doesn't rely on anyone else in terms of servers or even video player tech or anything like that. And so then that launched in November, as the whole COVID nonsense basically started in the January, and then really started in the March and the April. And so you were looking at these people just getting deplatformed left, right, and centre, and all of a sudden we had this ability to not be, which they're trying to change at the minute with this online safety bill. They've brought that in the UK. They're bringing in one similar in Australia, one similar in New Zealand. It's all coordinated. They've all had the same idea at the same time. Coincidence. But yeah, it gave us so much freedom during the pandemic to get whistleblowers on, genuine whistleblowers that were doctors or were people that have been working in care homes, and people whose family members have been killed with the use of midazolam and all this kind of stuff, that could not get a gig on the mainstream because, one, the mainstream wouldn't touch them, and two, even people that were what you'd call mainstream light, that were kind of, testing the boundaries a bit, they would look at that person and go, well, I kind of want to have you on, but I'm going to get my channel deleted, so I won't have you on. And so all of a sudden we were in a position where we were one of, with the exception of a few places in America, like, your Dell Big Trees, Highwire, and places like that, that were actually willing to go the whole way and not censor people. And it was funny because I was interviewing people that were going, I don't know if I can say this, and I was going, you can say what you want, mate. And they kind of would look surprised at you. Really? It's like, yeah, that's the whole point. The whole point is freedom of speech, and so a genuine free speech platform is actually really rare. Like, people claim to be it all the time. You'll have people like the Daily Wire saying, it's free speech. And then, you look at their reaction now, cheering on the bombing of innocent kids in Gaza, and it's like there's nothing alternative and free speech and loving and amazing about what you're doing. It's not coming from the same place. And so we, kind of found ourselves in a position of one of the only really free speech, certainly in this country, one of the only free speech platforms around, which is crazy.
It's a really good platform, actually, because it has evolved to something really good as well. It's very professional. I remember when it started out, it was a bit amateurish, but now it's really, really good, I have to say.
Well, it was lots of people learning on the job. That was it. I had no desire. I did a tiny bit of presenting years and years before. I actually ended up presenting some festival footage, which is a musical festival for Virgin Media and things like that. Tiny little gigs here and there because I needed the money when I was younger, because obviously band life doesn't pay at all, let alone not pay well. And so, apart from that, I had no experience of presenting whatsoever, and I had no desire to do it, at all. And then, so I was doing little podcasts here and there, but I certainly wasn't up for being up front and center so much. Certainly not standing up on a stage and giving a speech to thousands of people. That was not something that I ever thought I would be doing. But then when you looked at what happened in March 2020 and the way that people bought it hook, line and sinker, but also the amount of people on the other side that got it and they saw that it was nonsense, and they were private messaging me, people I went to school with, people I used to work with, people I played football with, private messaging me saying, mate, I agree with you, I'm on your side, mate, but I can't say it because I'll lose my job, or I can't say it because my mother-in-law works for the NHS and she'll do X, Y, and Z and blah, blah. So there's all these people. And then I was thinking, right, okay, so I work for myself and I ain't going to fire myself. So I don't have that fear that these people have. My surname's Icke, so I lost all the normies years and years ago. So I'm not going to lose, friends and family members as a result of my views. And so, my wife's family are totally switched on, so I'm not going to lose that. And so actually, it came to, it's not a choice now, actually, because I have to stand up and say stuff, because if I don't, then who will? A handful of people. And it's a numbers game, isn't it, mate? I mean, it's the more people that stand up, the quicker this whole thing collapses. So it felt very much like a duty in a way, in fear of sounding overly dramatic, but it did. And it still does, because it's the last thing I want to do, mate. I'll be honest. It's the last thing I want to be doing.
I can actually relate to a lot of that, because I was never interested in being in front of a camera or presenting stuff, and look where I am today. I'm doing it because I lived in Manila at the time when the pandemic hit, And I always knew that something bad was eventually going to happen because, I've been following your father for a long time as well. And when the pandemic hit and Manila turned into a ghost city with no people, that's when I have to do something, I have to start something. And then I went to a hospital there, which was said to be a war zone hospital, and it was completely fucking empty. So
yeah.
Same phenomena all over the world.
Do you know what was funny as well? Because I saw it a lot, which was we were lucky in our hospital. And so I was having conversations with people on Facebook and people I went to school with who were, because I grew up on the Isle of Wight. Basically, there's not a lot of work on the Isle of Wight. So everyone scattered once they got old enough, basically. There's a few people that I went to school with still left there, but most people I know are dotted around the country, some even in Australia and New Zealand and Canada and whatever. But so it was quite an interesting place to be because I was getting people's views from all over England. And I had nurses that were working in Southampton General, which is a massive hospital. Of friends that were working in Derby Royal, which is a massive hospital. It's called a super hospital. It's a megalith of a building. And the same with different people all over the country. And they were all saying the same thing. We were lucky in our hospital. We were lucky in our hospital. And it's like, okay, so there's supposed to be war zones. You're lucky, you're lucky, you're lucky, you're lucky. There's a lot of lucky people at the moment because I keep hearing it all the time. And actually, a few of these people kind of heard me out. A few of them dug me out, and that's fine, whatever. But then the penny started to drop with quite a few of them. And it was interesting to watch people that were not necessarily calling me a granny killer or a tinfoil out or a cob idiot and all that sort of stuff. They probably wouldn't go, maybe behind my back, but they weren't saying it to me publicly because they were being polite because we knew each other. But people that disagreed with me fundamentally, but were then within a period of maybe 6 months, I would see a post and I would go, yes, I agree with it. Oh my, I did not expect you to be saying that. And these people switched. And all of a sudden you had nurses that were telling people to stay home. They were all of a sudden calling out lockdowns for the disgrace that it was, So that was quite interesting to see that happen and to see people evolve and wake up. And that then seemed to be hijacked by Ukraine, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. And then it got hijacked by climate change, which again blew my mind a little bit, where I was looking at people that had seen through the Rona, but then hung on every word of the very same people that lied to them over the Rona, and they accepted had lied to them over the Rona, that was then telling them about climate change. So it's all of a sudden like Bill Gates is a demon, but he's right about climate change. It was very, very surreal to watch. And I'm watching it happen now where people that would kind of claim to be quite switched on and alert to the ways of the world and to the global cult and all this kind of stuff now saying, bomb the hell out of Gaza. It's quite extraordinary to watch that, actually. To watch people awaken and then others go to sleep.
Is it a big change since post-pandemic and pre-pandemic?
I think so, yeah. I mean, to be honest, mate, it was starting to change anyway, in my mind. I think the awakening, I think there's more people awake now than there ever has been before. I think that started before COVID. I think COVID just took it to another level. It woke so many people up because it was just so, the prison bars weren't actually invisible anymore. They were real because you were literally told to stay in your house and you were literally banned from going to the pub or banned from going to the gym or going to work, but you could still get McDonald's. And so that started to kind of wake people up a bit. But before that, I always use this as an example. I would have 3 groups of friends, right? So I'd have my friends, like I would consider yourself to be, where if we went into a pub, we'd probably put the world to rights and have a conversation. And then I would have my football mates that I would go to watch Derby County every Saturday because I was a season ticket holder at the time. And never the two should meet. Like, you would never bring up subjects. And if you did let something slip, oh, here we go, Ike's off on one again. And so I knew that you would just talk football with these lads and you could talk politics with these lads. And then there'd be some, musician mates I knew that, again, you would maybe talk about artistic stuff with, but they weren't really into football and they certainly weren't really into, any kind of conspiracy. And so I had these 3 groups of friends where, I knew where I was with them. And then what was happening was I was going to the pub to watch, the football or whatever, and these lads were coming and going, here, Ike, have you seen this? And it's like, yeah, I've been saying that for about 2 years, mate. And these were the ones that were, the football lot were the ones that woke up more. The musicians, the arty types, which are supposedly anti-establishment, they went to sleep big time. And that's why when you look at COVID, you see musicians like your Eddie Vedders and your Dave Grohls, who were supposedly anti-establishment, just lapping it up and pushing the jab. And then on the other hand, you had footballers that are supposed to be idiots, silly idiots, were actually the ones that were speaking out. It was extraordinary, really, to watch. Actually, it was kind of these footballer types were actually the ones that were fighting back against the establishment, which is mad because you've got a man on £200,000 a week who's calling out the establishment. That's extraordinary, when you think about it. Because he's done quite well out of the establishment, but they were the ones calling it out. So that was quite surreal. And like I say, that little demographic change was happening before COVID.
As you know, as I said before, I think I've been a supporter of ICKONIC since it started. The material on your streaming service raises all kinds of topics. I mean, from the conspiratorial side of things to spiritual subjects. What do you think about the traditional division where some only engage in a conspiratorial alternative media and some only on the new age spectrum, so to speak? Can you see a difference there where we are today? Is it the same division, or do you think it's starting to merge?
I think there is a bit more merger because I think people are more open to stuff than they ever would have been. I remember seeing a meme from the end of 2020, and it was basically a point of view of a guy driving. So he's looking at the front of his car, you can see the steering wheel, and there's just a cow, and it just says, I was going to say something, but it's 2020 in it. And I think, people have got to that point where if you said to them 3 years ago, 4 years ago, this, what happened during the pandemic, this is going to happen, they would have laughed at you. So people's idea of what's possible has changed. Those people that would have been very kind of, I believe in conspiracies, but I only believe in sort of 5 cents conspiracies. I believe in conspiracy to commit fraud or whatever. I don't believe in any of that airy-fairy nonsense. They're now starting to go, well, I don't know, actually. You might be onto something, So that's happened. But there is still a division there. And you do find that a lot of people within the conspiracy circles, particularly in the United States, are still very, very Christian in terms of they've got quite a rigid, organized religion belief. And so therefore any idea of the new age is completely wrong to them, basically, borderline satanic to them, which I see quite a bit, which is quite extraordinary. Because it's just another fault line. Because these will be the same people that will say, look at governments, they divide and conquer. Yeah, that's sort of what you guys are doing to each other, It's quite strange, really.
Yeah.
That whole kind of live and let live, you do you, hun, you have your own beliefs, I have mine, do you fancy a pint, has kind of gone out the window a bit, and it seems to be quite a, almost kind of quite a minority view, which is strange. And you're seeing that in this last couple of days over what's going on in Israel and Palestine. You've got children being murdered on both sides, and you're being asked, or told rather, to pick a side. Can I pick the side of the families and the innocent people, please? On both sides. That's the side I'm on. I don't give a toss about Hamas or a bunch of thugs. I don't care about the Israeli armed forces who are a bunch of thugs. Do you know what I mean? I care about them. I care about the people that are being killed on both sides. But that's a minority view. So you've got to pick a side. And it's the same with so many different things, even within the alternative, which is so strange. Because for me, life's in the shades of grey, isn't it? Life isn't. You've got these two polar views that you're supposed to accept as the reality. So that's why you have a real man, a masculine man. A real man is Andrew Tate. He's got all these fancy cars, loads of women, loads of money. That's a real man. And then on the other hand, you've got the left going, do you know what I mean? This is a man, and it's like the most demasculinized guy, waif, completely, no masculinity whatsoever, because that's toxic, And you've got these two polar opposites. These are. It's like, well, can I be that guy here, please? Can I be the guy in the middle that actually has masculine traits and the ability to protect his family, but can also be emotionally grounded and empathetic, and all these other bits of that make up, the two polar opposites. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, you're told you've got to be one or the other, and it's the same in politics. Are you right wing or left wing? Neither. It's the same bird.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The same bird pecking at your eyes. But
it's like they hijacked the conspiracy movement with the right wing, especially in the US, in the States. But it's the same everywhere, even in Sweden. So I mean, and I've never understood it because I always see it as like divide and conquer methods. So.
Oh, exactly. That's the thing. But the Overton windows change so much. It's extraordinary. Like my views at 41 years old are pretty much the same as they were at 21 years old, if I'm honest, which is you do you, hun. You live your best life, mate. As long as it doesn't negatively impact anyone else and you're not compelling other people to go along with your lifestyle, it's yours, it's your choice, but you're not compelling anyone else to do it and forcing people to do things against their will or speak in a certain way or act in a certain way that isn't their desire. That was a very left-wing attitude when I was 21. That was, you know, lefty liberal, and I was called a southern softie leftist. That's what I used to get called when I was 21. When I was still playing ice hockey, I had long hair, and they used to call me Swampy, who was this eco warrior, and my teammates used to call me Swampy because they thought it was funny, and that's what I was, southern softie leftist with a nickname Swampy. And you go forward 20 years, and I'm that same guy, and I have people telling me that I've got far right viewpoints and all this kind of stuff, and you're like, but my view is the same, which is you do you, hun. You live your life, and I'll live mine. And you know, with a bit of luck, we'll all go for a beer afterwards and be mates. And that's I think has pushed the right a little bit because it's made everyone right wing, even when they're not. But you're absolutely right. That right wing, that conservative aspect of American politics with your likes of your Trumps and your DeSantis and all these kind of people, they have hijacked it, definitely. Absolutely they have.
Yeah, it's really strange actually. Even my family see me as a right wing, and I'm politically uninterested in everything when it comes to politics. I have no interest whatsoever, and I'm the same as you just said. I'm the same as I've always been. So I don't understand. You've changed, not me. You've changed.
Yeah,
so.
That's the point. The Overton windows moved to what is an acceptable viewpoint, and so now, you know, you're in a situation where you go back 20 years, and if you said that women had penises, you'd be stuck. You'd be bloody put you in a padded cell. Whereas now you say women don't have penises, and you're a bigot, right wing, far right. Do you know what I mean? And so that doesn't make it true. Do you know what I mean? But it's what people will throw at you. And I always think, you know, that name calling is, it's you know, it's a last resort, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I'm having a debate with someone, the minute they call me a knobhead, I know they've lost the debate. Simple as that. Because if you could win the debate by presenting facts that showed me to be a fool, you would have done, but you can't, so you're calling me names instead. So, you know, the minute I see name calling, the minute I think, yeah, okay, you've checked out, you've lost.
So where do you see ICKONIC going? What kind of projects are you involved in, and what would you like to create? Where does your passion and heart lie, so to speak?
To be honest, what I enjoy the most is giving a voice to people that don't have one. That's my biggest thing. So when I do the show, you know, it's great to talk to political commentators, and it's great to talk to politicians and doctors and these kind of people that give an insight that I don't have because I'm not a doctor and I've not been inside a political machine. So that I find interesting. But the ones where people have got something to say and no one's listening to them, and they don't feel like they've got a voice, and then they can come on and sit there and tell their truth to the world. That I love that. I find that really empowering to be part of. But I'll be honest with you, mate. Long term, I'd love for it to not to have to exist. that would be my dream, mate. That would be the dream. You know, that you don't need to do things like this. And so then I would love, you know, because with ICKONIC, like I was filming The Walk and stuff like that, like which are more entertainment shows, which were for people listening that don't know. It was basically I love walking, absolutely love it. So I'm always doing it in the countryside anyway. So I would travel around the country, travel around different countries within the UK, basically walking from one point to another, a few miles. Some of them were like silly, like 30 miles, but some were like just 4 or 5 miles. And you would talk to people within those areas about history, folklore, urban legends, you know, just stuff that was dead interesting, but not, you know, too political, not too, you know, whatever. Some of it was quite emotional, like in terms of like being in Scotland and talking to people about the Scottish witch trials, which people don't realise just how bad they were. It was extraordinary. Things like that, you know, it's quite, you know, quite upsetting to hear the details. But that sort of stuff I would love to go back to making, you know, so actually not have to do these kind of political stuff, and not have to do this kind of exposing corruption and whatever, because actually we've sorted that out. And then what I can do is just put my backpack on and go for a walk and talk to interesting people. That'd be my dream. But unfortunately, at the minute, it feels like we're a way off that. I feel like we're closer than we were 10, 15 years ago, but I still feel like, unfortunately, we're a way off, because what seems to happen is people will wake up to what is going on, and then you start to get excited. Hang on, there's a bit of momentum here. We're riding a crest of a wave here. This could bring this down. Just like with COVID, when people stopped buying COVID, people stopped going and getting jabs, and people just were not going along with it. People were just basically saying we ain't going to go along with another lockdown, and it died. And as soon as it died, Putin must have got a phone call, because he went straight into Ukraine, and then that started, and that's the next thing. And then obviously Ukraine started dying out, because I started seeing, all around the area, like people started pulling their Ukraine, virtue signaling Ukraine flags down, when they realized that actually there's more to this than meets the eye, and actually this Zelensky guy is a bit of a crook. And then all of a sudden, then climate change was everywhere. We had all these hot days, never mind the fact that we had a month of rain and cold weather before it. All of a sudden, everything was focusing on that. And then people started to actually not go along with that anymore. Like, oh, no, I'm not having this. These Just Stop Oil protesters that are blocking hospitals and stuff. No, I'm not on board with that. So then this guy, Dale Vince in the UK, he pulls his funding just a few days ago. He pulls his funding from Just Stop Oil, pulls his funding from Extinction Rebellion. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. People aren't going along with it. Bang, then Israel happens. And then when Israel has bombed the hell out of Gaza, and other people have escalated and whatever, and it's eventually fizzled out, whenever that does, or at least on the face of it fizzled out, there'll be the next one. And so it feels like they've always got something up their sleeve to chuck at you, either as a distraction or to cause division, which is disheartening.
I'm a bit curious. I've obviously heard your father where he thinks the world is going and why. What's your view?
I think the idea of the Great Reset, the Hunger Games society, where you have those at the top with everything and those at the bottom with nothing, is the goal. There's just different ways of getting there. And so you can look at the pandemic, you can look at the cost of living crisis, which is obviously linked into lockdowns, of course, but then you look at the energy crisis, Ukraine, Russia being used as an excuse for that. You look into even Israel, Palestine, and the potential escalation that will come from that in terms of a large-scale war. All these things look completely independent from each other. Climate change, that could sound, they look completely independent from each other, but you go, okay. But every single one of them will end up with people being poorer than they were before it started. So whether that be lockdowns, causing mass job losses and bankruptcies and companies to falter and the economy to collapse, or energy prices bankrupting people because they literally can't afford to heat their house, or then full-scale wars that will bankrupt nations. So then taxes go up and inflation goes up, and all these things, they all end up in the same result, which is you've got less money in your pocket, and because you've got less money in your pocket, you've got less freedom, because unfortunately the two they're linked completely. And so you're then creating a situation where people have nothing. And that's when people will be desperate. And then what would you do? Then you offer the solution. That's like my dad always says, this problem, reaction, solution. So if you go back to the World Economic Forum saying that you will own nothing, you'll have no privacy, but you'll be happy, and you go, well, I wouldn't be happy with that. That's bonkers. But then you go forward another period of time, and if they put things into place to create a situation where you almost beg for that. So I say this to people all the time. If someone came to you and said, give me the rights to your house, right? You still live in it, but give me the rights to your house. I'll own it, but you can live in it. And also I'm going to set up a camera right outside so I can just see what's going on all the time. You would tell them to jog on. You go, no, you're all right, mate. But if you create a situation where that person is bankrupt, they've lost their job, they're defaulting on the payments, they've got, letter after letter after letter from the bailiffs, they're going to come around, take the telly, they're going to take the kids' toys, all that sort of stuff, can't afford to do anything, right? And then you come along and you say, you keep the house, and I'll provide you a universal basic income, so you've got some food. You just need to sign the right to that house over to me. How many people would sign it over in a heartbeat? I think most, actually. They would hand it over in a heartbeat. And then you create a situation as well where you go, and also the world is a dreadful place at the minute, and people are obviously struggling. And so what we do, we'll set up this camera outside your house so we can just keep an eye, just make sure everyone's safe. And you go, oh, thanks so much for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. And then you go back to them, do you know what I mean? Back in time and go, ask the same question. Would you do this? Would you give up this? Would you? And you go, no, I wouldn't. Oh, you will. And you did. You did in the future, because the situation was created that actually that was the best case scenario, or at least you felt was the best case scenario at the time. You know, it's a protection racket. It's that whole thing, isn't it? Where you, I always look at that, where you go, I want to buy your restaurant. I don't want to sell my restaurant. Yeah, but I want to buy it. Yeah, but I don't want to sell it. Okay. So then all of a sudden, period of time later, windows start getting smashed at your restaurant. People start knocking around in the car park, beating up your clientele. So all of a sudden your clientele start to leave because they don't want to go there anymore because it's got broken windows and they might get beaten up if they turn up there. And then what happens is your place goes down and down and down and down and bankrupt. And then I come along again. I want to buy your restaurant. Oh yeah, take it, because I can't afford it anymore anyway. And no one seems to be putting two and two together, which is actually, you know, that original geezer? Yeah, he's the one throwing the bricks in the window and he's the one attacking people in your car park. You know, do you know what I mean? And that's what I find so frustrating at times, that actually more people do than did before, but there's still people now that can't see, actually, you're being played. You're being played massively.
We saw something similar in the Maui when the insurance companies didn't pay out the amount, or they wouldn't honor the insurance policies, and then the billionaires went in and bought the land.
Yeah.
But Gareth, what do you ultimately think the solution is to everything that is happening in the world today and the challenges we're facing?
I think the solution is the same as it's always been, which is mass non-compliance. And people will go, oh yeah, but that's just a simple way of looking at it. Well, yeah, but often the simplest answers are the right ones. Just don't go along with it. Don't attack. Don't be violent. Don't, just simply say no. And if enough people say no, that's the end of it. And the example I will always use for that is, you take March 2020. All governments around the world in lockstep, with the odd exception of, to be fair, your own, came in, shut everything down. Now, if they'd have come up to you in March 2020 and said, we're going to shut down your business, and the masses had gone, no, you're not. It was over. It was over instantly. But what happened was most just went, yeah, okay. And the odd one said no, but they were outnumbered. So it's a case of more and more people have to come together and have the backbone to stand up, which is why I'm trying to do, and I guess why you're trying to do exactly the same thing, trying to wake people up to the point where actually they will feel empowered enough to stand up. And I think, that is simply the answer. Is it's a numbers game. And like I was saying, the example I give is, so 2020, Christmas 2020, they shut down the UK. They shut it down for Christmas. Screwed over all those businesses, all those restaurants, all those pubs that had been allowed open at that point. They were told they were going to be open for Christmas, so they'd gone and bought all their stock for Christmas, all the meats and all the barrels of beer and all the wine and all that sort of stuff, were then just shut down. So they've outlaid all this money and they can't get any of it back, which led to all these restaurants and bars closing down. So then the next year, they wanted to do the same. And they were saying, we might have to lock down for Christmas again, cases are surging, all this sort of nonsense. And they were incessantly constantly polling the population of Britain. What would you do if there was a lockdown? What would you do if a lockdown? Would you comply with the lockdown? Would you do that? And the people overwhelmingly went, no, you can lock us down if you want, but we're not complying. And so the government looked at it. Boris Johnson was still the PM at that point. He's looked at it and gone, right, I've got two choices here. I can let them have Christmas and say it was my idea. Yeah, you have Christmas. I'm a libertarian, me. You have it. Or I can be a strict authoritarian, do what I really want to do, which is shut them down anyway. But then they'll ignore me, and it will show exactly where the power dynamic lies. In which case, I'm screwed, my government's screwed, and the House of Cards generally is screwed because more and more people have gone, oh, I am more powerful than I thought I was, And so he chose, obviously, the previous one. And so he said, you can have Christmas. And it was like, no, you didn't give us Christmas, mate. We'd already told you we were having it anyway, And so that was a great example to me of actually people showing that they've got the power. That no, we're not complying. We're not doing it. We're not going to war. I'm not carrying a gun for you. I'm not going to shoot someone that I don't know for you. And enough people do that, it ends. It ends. And people will listen to this and go, "Oh, what a simplistic view!" But in my mind, that's the truth. Just don't go along with it.
Yeah. very profound as well. There was something interesting in Sweden because they couldn't lock down Sweden because of our constitution, but they presented it like it was, oh, we're letting you be free. Look how nice we are compared to the other countries.
Maybe they don't want you to know your constitution either.
Probably. All right, Gareth, I think I will leave it there actually. I'd like to thank you for coming on my show. I really enjoyed having you on. And I wish you all the best of luck for you and ICKONIC going forward. And I hope to speak to you again someday, actually.
I would love to, mate. Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks. Take care, mate.
Take care.